Islam is the largest growing faith in the world today, in which many Muslims claim that Islam means peace. The Islamic Community is the largest minority faith group. The 2001 census found that the UK had the minority ethnic population of just over 4.6 million, 7.9% of the population. 1.6 million Muslims in the UK, making them the largest minority faith group and over half the non-Christian religious population. More recent estimates suggest that the Muslim population increased to over 2.5 million by 2010 and will continue to increase to over 5.5 million by 2030. These statistics show that the Islamic community is continuing to grow and very large as it stands, and therefore a key aspect in the UK's today's society. However, in recent times, due to the increase in terror attacks around the world, the Islamic community has been greatly victimized due to mainly stereotyping. Muslims are just as affected as any other person from terror attacks. However, a poll in July 2005 asked Muslims about the kinds of adverse treatment they might have experienced. 14% said they had experienced verbal abuse, 32% felt they had been the object of hostility or physical violence, 42% felt they had been the object of suspicion by police. Most research suggests that the greatest public hostility and prejudice is directed towards those who are visibly identified as or perceived to be Muslim, including non-Muslims such as Sikhs wearing turbans. It is clear to see this is all through racial stereotyping, and what people fail to see is that the majority of Muslims and the Muslim community are strongly against acts of terrorism, as we can see from this following video.
It is true.
It's obviously wrong. It's not true at all.
1 in 5 is too big. Even if they say 0.5, that's too big as well.
This is completely false and gives a wrong portrayal of Muslims in Britain. And I think it would just incite more hatred towards Muslims for those who don't know about Islam.
It's just to single us Muslims out, as a religion, to single us out, to say, okay, this is what Muslims are capable of, this is the capacity, they're a nasty load of people. They're really trying to decommunitize us? Is that what they're doing? Yeah, that's what I think. But this is not Islam, it's got nothing to do with Islam. This is not jihad, this is not what jihad is all about. If anybody did a little bit of reading, you'll find out that this is no representation of Islam whatsoever. Hence why, who's supporting them? None of us.
As you can see from this video, Muslims and the Islamic community have been greatly affected as a whole, with many Muslims feeling scared to even practice their religion publicly, mainly due to discrimination. Mainly since 9/11, the discrimination against Muslims has increased hugely, affecting the Islamic community a great deal. A good example of how they have been discriminated against would be in the workplace. Evidence of discrimination is hard to obtain. In employment, for example, the easy examples of discriminations come from cases of discrimination brought against employers by the individuals. In addition to this, situations using CVs with the same qualification but with names that suggest different ethnic or religious backgrounds can prove to have been discriminated against in work. In 2004, for example, the BBC made a survey in which applications were made for jobs using applicants with the same qualifications and work experience but different names. A quarter of the applications by the candidates with traditional English-sounding names such as Jane Smith and Martin Jones were successful in securing an interview, however compared to only 9% of the applicants with Muslim names. This could be seen as greatly unfair, as just because of their genetic makeup, Muslims or anyone who stereotypically looks like a Muslim would have to fight much harder to fight for jobs, and this could be argued to be against their human rights as an individual. Following on 9/11, it can be seen that Muslims were oppressed by the government due to their religion in both America and the UK. Using the theory of Marxists to explain this, it could potentially show that the proletariat are the Muslims or the Islamic community, and the bourgeoisie are the governments of the UK and the US, as it could be seen that they are always keeping an eye on Muslims. prime examples of this would be post 9/11, over 18,000 Muslims have been deported from the US alone, and more than 15,000 Muslims have been detained or arrested. Not only this, but according to the Inspector General of Justice Department, Muslim prisoners are subject to extraordinary illegal treatment while in detention, once again which could be argued against human rights. In addition to this, not just the whole, but female Islam followers are also being hugely discriminated against, as they give off the connotation of being supporters of or being related to many terror groups such as Daesh by wearing of the hijab or burqas, which is once again negative stereotyping and discrimination of the minority. From the wearing of burqas, women could be more of an easy target for anti-Islamists to target, as they are easily identifiable and generally seen to be weaker than men. However, this angers feminists, especially Muslim feminists such as Shirin Ebadi, who fight against discrimination and oppression against Muslim women from both the public and governments, and for their human rights as well, in which she won a Nobel Peace Prize for. This following video demonstrates just how Muslim women are treated unfairly and discriminated against.
An American Muslim woman who was refused a can of Coke on a plane is suing United Airlines for discrimination. 31-year-old Tahira Ahmad says other passengers were given soft drinks, but the flight attendant allegedly refused to serve her for fear she might use the can as a weapon. Ahmad posted her story on Facebook and it quickly went viral. She spoke to us about the incident.
I asked her very politely, I said, I don't understand why you're refusing to give me an unopened beverage can. And she said that she is not authorized to give passengers unopened beverage cans because they may be used as a weapon on the plane. So at that point, I said, well, clearly you're discriminating because you gave the gentleman sitting next to me a closed beverage can. And so she looked at his beverage can, she took it from him, she opened it for him, and as she was putting it back down, she said, well, it's because you would use it as a weapon. And that's when I was in utter shock. I couldn't believe that I would be targeted in that way. So at that point I said, well, how dare you say that I would use it as a weapon? And I looked at the passengers around me and asked, like, did anyone just witness what she just said to me? And a man sitting across said, you Muslim, you need to shut the F up.
Conversely, however, a post-mortem view would be that in fact Muslim women are not being oppressed, as they are choosing to wear the hijab and doing it out of choice rather than force. Going back to Marx's view on religion, originally Karl Marx would disagree on religion as it's used by the government to control the masses and abide to rules. A great example of this would be in countries such as Iraq and Saudi Arabia. This theory is therefore rejected by Muslims. However, they both look for the same things such as social equality, but many Muslims argue that Islam ideally meets these needs of society and can both accommodate and guide social change. In conclusion, it's clear to see that post 9/11 and from recent terror attacks, Muslims have been interrogated and discriminated more in the UK and US due to both their genetic makeup and because of the faith they choose to follow, and therefore have been alienated in society and made to feel shame when the majority have done nothing wrong. This goes against their freedom of speech and arguably their human rights as an individual, but as a minority group in the UK and US, they have been hugely affected through the actions of terrorism.